He was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. She wondered what he would look like now, 19 years after the apocalypse. Nosa had enjoyed less than 2 weeks of marital bliss before the beatings and threats started. It was funny because she had searched for all these signs before her commitment, and not until the WHO reports came out did she finally understand what was happening. "Doctor!" Nosa spurned around to face the hunky man blocking the door. His clothes were tattered and several inches too short. It was common to see people dressed this way since the last clothes were produced and stitched some 19 years ago. Everyone had to make do with what they found in the camp. "You're crying," the guy continued. "Reports, please." She replied, sitting on the lab stool and peering into the microscope. She knew what he was talking about earlier. He saw her crying, and for some reason, she didn't want to discuss it. It's not like Mike was dead, he was just lost. It was the anniversary of her wedding to Mike, and no day went by without her wondering how different her life would have been. Life as we know it ended 21 years ago after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. It lasted for 2 years, with several nations being on lockdown, putting the economy of these nations into turmoil. Hope came with the invention of vaccines, hurriedly put together but effective all the same. Persons were mandated to take it or lose their jobs and social status. Clubs, churches, offices, and banks were closed until their inhabitants could produce proof of vaccination. And while these were effective in advanced countries, these restrictions were more difficult to effect in Africa, not until the third wave of the pandemic came and wiped out more persons than could be accounted for. Several persons scrambled for the vaccine, and soon enough, it became in short supply. This calm lasted for almost a year until that fateful day. All those who had taken the vaccine started exhibiting aggressive behavioral patterns exactly 1 year after their last dose of the vaccine. Violence and riots increased all over the world. Scientists tried to explain it and pin it to the mental strain that comes after the loss of a loved one. The world had lost so much, and in its bid to cope with such loss, it had become more and more aggressive and defensive. This theory didn't last long. Soon, people were killing themselves on the streets. Parents killing children, pregnant women having their babies ripped out in broad daylight. Security forces turning on themselves. We could no longer deny that something was wrong as people hid in their houses. Prophets spoke of the end of days, how the Antichrist was building his army, and Jesus or Muhammad or whatever they believed in was coming to save them. They waited for the Savior until they died off one by one. It became apparent that something was off with the vaccines, and on September 11th, 2022, the WHO, what was left of the body, finally put out a statement linking these animalistic behaviors to one of the active ingredients used in the product of all the variants of the vaccine gotten from recombinant DNA technology. The person goes on to exhibit aggressiveness 1 year after their second dose. It was worse for those who took booster shots. This level of aggressiveness was to last for 6 months, after which the body, unable to control the rapid rate of cell degradation, would kill itself. The world was thrown into mourning as people began to die off. This phase wiped out more people than the COVID pandemic, further thinning the world population. But to the amazement of the world, African nations did not lose the populace. Vaccinated individuals, after exhibiting aggressive behavior for 6 months, did not die off, but instead evolved into superhumans, having a heightened sense of smell, taste, and strength. They soon turned into monsters, driving people to seek protection in dedicated military barracks, sealed off from the rest of the world. We had waited months expecting America, or China, or Russia to come save us, but nothing happened. We had lost communication with the outside world. For the first time, Africa was alone. We had to think and start utilizing their resources to their advantage. Dr. Nosa and the rest of her team, camped in Jos, had for 19 years been working on an antidote that could reverse the actions of the first vaccine, and they had finally gotten close. They just had to prove that this one works.